There are literally hundreds of Rolex watches available. This can make choosing which Rolex to buy a little challenging. There are many people who know they want a Rolex, but they are not exactly sure what kind of Rolex to get. Who can blame them? Getting a Rolex is simply a statement. Now, there are different reasons people might want to get a Rolex. Some just want something they can always wear. Others want to get Rolex for the sake of value retention. Whatever your reason, you want your Rolex watch to have some value, meaning, and versatility in terms of style, especially if it's your first. Today, we have created a guide that is simple enough to help you navigate through getting your first Rolex. Rolex watch categories. There are 3 Rolex watch categories which include the professional, classic, and Cellini models. The Rolex professional models. 1. The Cosmograph Daytona. This is one of Rolex's most sought-after models, and it's always scarce in the market. If the Cosmograph Daytona is what you intend to get, then you might be on the waiting list forever. In fact, the most expensive Rolex watch ever sold at an auction was a Cosmograph Daytona Paul Newman's. Features of the Cosmograph Daytona include a 40mm case size, water resistance of 100 meters, 4,130 movement, fixed bezel, with a tachometer scale, an Oyster Flex or Oyster bracelet, and an Oysterlock clasp. 2. The Sea Dweller. This is the largest Rolex watch model available. It has excellent performance underwater, and the deep-sea version was on James Cameron's wrist when he went down to the bottom of the Mariana Trench. Features include a 43mm oyster steel case, 1,220 meters water resistance, 3,135 movement, Cyclops, unidirectional bezel, with Serichrome insert, Oyster bracelet, Oysterlock clasp, and a glidelock extension mechanism. 3. The Submariner. The Rolex Submariner is the dive watch of all dive watches. In fact, this is probably the world's most iconic wristwatch of all time. Features of this watch include a 40mm case, water resistance of 300 meters, a 3,135 movement for the date watches, a 3,130 movement for the no-date watches, a unidirectional dive bezel with a Serichrome insert, Oyster bracelet, Oysterlock clasp, and a glidelock extension mechanism. 4. GMT Master II. These are pilot watches from Rolex with all kinds of nicknames, including Pepsi for the red and blue bezel, Coke for the red and black bezel, and Root Beer for the different gold or brown tones. Features include a 40mm case, water resistance down to 100 meters, 3,186 movement with a 24-hour hand and date complication, bi-directional 24-hour bezel, used to track multiple time zones at a time, and an Oyster or Jubilee bracelet. 5. Explorer. It was named the Explorer after Sir Edmund Hillary's adventure with a Rolex Oyster on Mount Everest in 1953. Rolex rebranded this watch and named it the Explorer. It's reliable, simple, and rugged. Features of this watch include a 39mm case, water resistance down to 100 meters, 3,132 movement, no date, fixed bezel, Oyster bracelet, Oysterlock clasp, and EasyLink expansion mechanism. 6. Explorer II. The Explorer II is targeted towards adventurers such as spelunkers who work in constantly dark environments. It is larger than the Explorer and comes with a 24-hour GMT function as well as a fixed 24-hour bezel. This watch is one of Rolex's very niche specific tool watches. Features of this watch include a 42mm oyster steel, 100 meters water resistance, a 3,187 movement, 24-hour GMT function with Paraflex anti-shock system, a fixed 24-hour bezel, Oyster bracelet, and Oyster clasp. 7. Milgauss. The shape of the second hand of the Milgauss watch says a bit about what this watch is built for. It comes in the shape of a lightning bolt, which tells the wearer that the Milgauss is built for the most extreme electromagnetic environments. This especially applies to people working in an electric plant or around an accelerator. However, these days, it is also used by people who simply want to make a statement of fashion. Features of this watch include a 40mm oyster steel case, 100-meter water resistance, a 3,131 movement featuring an anti-magnetic shield but with no date, a fixed steel bezel, an Oyster bracelet, and an Oysterlock clasp. 8. Air King. This watch was introduced after the World War II. It was introduced as an aviation watch because, at the time, a lot of World War II pilots got the watch due to the fact that it was super legible and super accurate as well. Today, the Air King comes with a unique dial that divides its markers between minutes and hours. Plus, it's probably the only dial to cause quite a division among Rolex fans. Features of this watch include a 40mm oyster steel case, 100 meters water resistance, a 3131 movement with an anti-magnetic shield but no date, a fixed steel bezel, an oyster steel bracelet, and an oysterlock clasp. 9. Yacht-Master. The Yacht-Master could have been a dive watch, but its bezel isn't unidirectional. It rotates in both directions, which isn't the standard for dive watches. Anyway, the bezel's ability to turn in both directions is in a bid to make for quick alignments. Features of the Yacht-Master include a 37 or 40mm case, which can be made of all kinds of metals, 100 meters water resistance, 2236 movement, 37mm, 3135 movement, 40mm, date complication, bidirectional bezel from precious metals, and all kinds of bracelet options available. 10. Yacht-Master II. Just like the Yacht-Master II is built for sailboat racing. It also comes with a bi-directional bezel which is used to program the countdown chronograph just like on its big brother. Features of this watch include a 44mm case in all kinds of metals, 100 meters water resistance, a 4161 movement, a regatta chronograph with a countdown timer, a rotating bezel in cerachrome or other precious metals, an oyster bracelet, and an oysterlock clasp. Now, let's discuss the Rolex classic models. 1. Oyster Perpetual. The Oyster Perpetual is probably Rolex's most basic watch. It's a descendant of the first set of original watches Rolex ever made that set them on the big stage. They come with only 3 hands, no date or day complication, and are quite classy. Features of this watch include oyster steel cases 26, 31, 34, 36, and 39mm, 100 meters water resistance, 2231 movement for the 26 and 31mm, 3130 movement, 34 and 36mm, 3132 movement, 39mm, fixed steel bezel, oyster bracelet, and oysterlock clasp. 2. Datejust. The name Datejust is a neologism for the date changes just before midnight. So, unlike most watches where the date takes several hours to change, that of the Datejust changes just at midnight. It's a classy dress watch, but it is also great for adventures as well. Features of this watch include cases made from various precious metals in 28, 31, 34, 36, and 41mm, 100 meters water resistance, 2236 movement, 28 and 31mm models, 3135 movement, 34mm model, 3235 movement, 36 and 41mm models, date complication, diamond-encrusted bezels, smooth steel bezels, classic fluted bezels, and various kinds of bracelets. 3. Day date. The day date is simply a Datejust with a day complication. The Rolex day date is much fancier than the Datejust and is sometimes called the Rolex President as it has been associated with many world leaders. By the way, the 40mm Rolex day date is the only Rolex watch sporting the Cal .3255, Rolex's newest watch movement. Features of the Rolex day date include 36 and 40mm cases in platinum and 18K gold, 100 meters water resistance, 3135 movement for the 36mm model, 3255 movement for the 40mm model, day and date complication, bejeweled, fluted, and smooth bezels, and various bracelets available. 4. Pearlmaster. The Pearlmaster is similar to a Datejust except that it comes bejeweled with loads of precious stones. This watch sells for crazy prices and can sometimes look over the top for some people. However, one thing you can trust is that Rolex uses only the best stones and with its army of gemologists, sets stones excellently too. Features of this watch include 34 and 39mm cases precious metals only, 100 meters water resistance, 2235 movement for the 34mm model, 3235 movement for the 39mm model, date complication, all kinds of bejeweled bezels, and a Pearlmaster bracelet. 5. Sky Dweller. The Rolex Sky Dweller is Rolex's most complicated watch. It has a non-concentric 24-hour GMT disc which indicates a second time zone. It also comes with an annual calendar which works with the 12-hour markers to signify the month. Considering the unique features of this watch, we'd say the Sky Dweller is not so expensive. But don't read that wrong, this is still a Rolex and is quite pricey. Features of this watch include a 42mm oyster steel bezel, 100 meters water resistance, 9001 movement, an annual calendar, fluted gold bezel, leather or oyster bracelet, and an oysterlock clasp. The Rolex Cellini models. The Cellini line is Rolex's line of dress watches, and from what we know, even Barack Obama owns one. Rolex uses, in its words, sober and refined lines, noble materials, quality finishings, every detail respects the codes of the art of watchmaking. Features of Cellini watches include 39mm case in precious metals, 50 meters water resistance, 3132 movement for the time-only watches, a 3180 movement for the dual-time models, a 3195 for the moon phase models, various kinds of bezels, fluted or with precious stones, leather bracelet, and with a traditional pin buckle. The Rolex watch colors. There are three primary watch case colors when it comes to Rolex watches. These are the stainless steel, the gold, and the two-tone. 1. Stainless steel. This is the most popular of the three Rolex colors. Fortunately, Rolex uses 904L steel, which is more durable, scratch-resistant, and shinier. Stainless steel is classic and can easily be dressed up or down. It can also be worn in both personal and business settings. 2. Gold. Rolex uses 18K gold for its watches, and this gold has all kinds of hues from yellow to white to Everose. Just a quick tip here. If you want to buy a gold Rolex watch, be careful to see it first before making a purchase. Why? Because people can edit their photos to make their watches look brighter than they actually are. So, be sure to see it firsthand so you can decide for yourself if this is the kind of gold you want. However, most gold Rolex watches are bright and brilliant. They are common in the entertainment circles for their showiness. Outside of such circles, a gold Rolex can look a little too much. One more thing about gold Rolexes before we move on: some Rolexes are made of solid gold while others are made of hollow gold. While there is no hard and fast rule to determining which is which, typically, most gold Rolexes made after year 2000 are solid gold while most before year 2000 are hollow gold. 3. Two-tone. Two-tone Rolex watches usually come predominantly in stainless steel and then with gold accents typically on the dial and the band. They are quite popular among professionals and business executives who want to show only a hint of gold. Some factors to consider when getting a Rolex. You must decide, before you buy any Rolex watch, what you intend to do with the watch. Is it for everyday wear? Is it to start a collection? Is it for value retention? If you're thinking of an everyday watch, then look no further than Rolex's sport models. They are easily available, have a timeless appearance, and will retain value even if they might not necessarily increase in value. If you are a collector, then you should be looking towards Rolex's niche models. A good example is Rolex Submariner with the green bezel and dial. It is slightly more expensive than the black dial Submariner and is also much rarer. Those who are seeking a Rolex watch just for the special occasions might find it beneficial going for the showier models. Think precious metals and diamonds. These watches make a statement of class and wealth and can only work with certain outfits. A Rolex Submariner, on the other hand, will impress no one in a high society event. Which Rolex to get? Our recommendation. The Rolex Submariner is typically the go-to watch for most Rolex lovers. The 40mm case is a great middle ground as it could either be dressed up in a tux or dressed down in a tee. However, if you like exclusivity, the Submariner might not be it for you, as nearly everyone who gets a Rolex automatically goes for a Submariner. If you love the Submariner but prefer the exclusivity, there are Rolex watches with similar styles that you could go for. Examples include the GMT Master II, the Sea Dweller Deep Sea, larger in size and more professional, and the Yacht-Master, which is a dressier watch. These all share the same DNA as the Submariner. If you want a less expensive option than the popular Submariner, you could try the Rolex Explorer and Explorer 2 models. They are affordable, adequately sized and good-looking. For Rolex lovers that love to show off, the Daytona chronograph is definitely it. It comes in a variety of styles and is quite a dressy but versatile watch. Compared to most chronograph watches, the Daytona is somewhat small, but it has a huge following and sells for a higher price than the Submariner. Rolex's most affordable models are the Rolex Air King. This entry-level Rolex watch works as a casual dress watch. However, it typically runs small and is mostly found with boys or women, as 34mm can be a little too small for a grown man's wrist. We recommend the Rolex Datejust if you like to make a statement of style but without a lot of noise. It sells for about the same price as a Submariner, but prices go up when precious metals get into the mix. Day-date Rolexes are also like the Datejust, except they are showier. So, if you like the style of the Datejust but you're all about making a loud statement, you might tilt towards the Rolex President, as it is fondly called. If you've enjoyed this video, click the subscribe button below and hit the notification bell so you'll know once we post a new video. Also drop a comment below so we can know your thoughts. Finally, don't forget to check the description below for more details and visit our site, www.theta-watches.com, for more awesome Theta watch content like this.